What's going on, guys? This is not my garage. This is just where I keep my boat. So I have actually a family friend that lives about 6-7 miles from my house in Anoka, and it's heated in here, so I never have to winterize it. I can keep it covered, and I'll be 100% honest with you, it's probably really filthy right now. But let's see if we can. That's way more better. Okay, so don't judge me. I did put this thing away like dirty. That's one of the reasons I was gonna be here today to do is try and wipe this thing down, but I don't have enough time. I am taking this boat down to Florida for like a month, between Florida and Georgia in like 4 or 5 days. And so I'm gonna do a bunch of vlogs going down there. That's gonna be great, it's gonna be fun. Meeting with a bunch of cool people, doing stuff for Under Armour, Power Pole, 13 Fishing. You're doing a lot of different companies. Gonna be fun with Carl. Gonna be doing stuff with some of my own companies that I own. It's gonna be a good time. Anyway, the biggest thing I want to do today, other than just check up on this, was actually do a, not unboxing, but more like a going over of the lenses that I use. Has nothing to do with me being in the boat. I just figured if I'm gonna make a video, might as well film it out of my boat, so I gotta go check it out anyway. So, gonna make sure everything's good to go. Do one more check over before I come back and pick this thing up. Hopefully I'll have some time in the next like 2 or 3 days to come back and try and clean this so it isn't totally nasty by the time I get down to Florida. At the same time, between here and Florida, there's gonna be nothing but, you know, snow and probably rain, all kinds of crap. So it'll probably just get dirty again anyway. So I don't know how much time I'm really gonna put into cleaning it before Florida, but. Okay, so what lenses I use and why. Okay, for starters, let's start with the lens that I keep on this body probably the most, especially when I'm traveling. This is my Sony a7R III. This is a 16-35. This is an f4, so they do make a G Master version of this lens. It's a Sony native, full frame. It's meant to go on the A series cameras, but I don't use it on my FS700 a ton. I usually mainly use it just on this guy. It's really good in terms of kind of a do-it-all. It only goes up to 35 on a full frame. You can always crop in if you're taking pictures or 4K footage or whatever, but for the most part, a 16-35 will get most of what you need done. This is a little more of an expensive lens. It is a Zeiss. It can throw background pretty well. I would say that even at f4, when I get pretty close to my subjects, I can get probably about 8-9 inches away and throw the background pretty well. So I use this for not only just photos, but for video when I shot with video with this camera a lot, because you guys know in other videos I've talked about the video capabilities of this camera is pretty neat as well. But this, I would say, for things like stuff you're really trying to get closer to your subject, but not trying to lose context of what's around you. Which is, I know fancy words are just saying wide angle, but it's reality. If I'm trying to capture someone working with their hands, tying a jig, tying a frog, a lot of times I'll do it right in the front of the boat like this. I can get their hands, but I can get a lot of what's around them as well. You're not losing the background, so to speak, versus a longer lens, I'd have to go back, shoot into it, and it would just be like a close-up of their hands. You wouldn't really see any background, just only foreground. So I really do enjoy this lens. When I first got it, I wasn't a fan because I thought I needed a 2.8 because it'd throw the background that much better and be that much more crisp. But in all honesty, I found myself actually the video footage and the pictures that I end up posting and using a lot come out of this lens, which is an interesting thing because when you go into the shoot thinking you're not going to use it as much and you find out that a lot of the stuff that you shot with this lens is something you actually end up using in production shoots, it's kind of a big deal. And it shows you that you obviously are using the lens a lot. That's number one. We'll start with there. I think I'll go through other things like the focus systems and adapters and such after we go through them all. I don't want to go into crazy detail. This today is more just about the lens themselves. I'll definitely be posting some pictures around here and such from this lens while I talk and such too. So that'll be a bonus. So auto stabilization, this thing, nuts. This lens is itself, as well as the body, but the lens, it's a killer. So great for video as well as photo. Let's go with this guy. This is a Sony 1.8 85 mil. This is what I would call. So yeah, I call it a portrait lens, but a lot of people will kind of be like, well, that's not really a portrait lens because it's 85, right? Or they think like a 35 or 40 or like a 50 or 60 or something like that. This is a little longer, I'll give you that. Like you can't get quite as close to your subject, but in terms of throwing background and how crisp you can make things look with this lens, it's insane. At that 1.8, you're literally lighting in so much light and you're opening up your aperture so much that the background, I mean, you're talking like, for me to a couple feet away, your focal point's literally a matter of an inch or two. That actually is in focus. In fact, you have to be careful because a lot of times you'll take a picture of someone's face or like and the nose or something like that will be in focus and the rest of their eyes won't. So you always gotta set your focal point on their eyes and everything else should just kind of match together. This is only like I think like a $600 lens. It isn't anything like crazy expensive. But in terms of how well I can fill the background and letting a lot of light in, I find myself throwing this on once in a while if the situation gets too dark for what I want to shoot stills with my A7. Because that is a 42 megapixel sensor, the pixels are a little bigger and it doesn't let a lot of light in. So for low light, that camera isn't ideal. It's not bad. It's still pretty good, but it isn't ideal. So having a 1.8 lens and then really letting that light soak in for long exposures as well as just trying to get the most out of the daylight you got, it's great. Now, this is a photo lens. This is not a video lens. So it's not it doesn't have stabilization. The body still will. And both in the FS700 and the A7R3, they have in-body stabilization. That'll help you. But this is not a video lens. So you're gonna notice that this compared to like another focal length on my 200 or 70-200, which I have, putting that at 85 versus this, you notice a very, very big difference because that lens has auto stabilization within the lens. So it's gonna be hard to really get crisp, non-shaky video unless you're on a tripod. You're really in a situation where you can concentrate in your hands, moving around and such. This is gonna look very shaky because it's designed to be a photo lens. You can do both, but that's just reality. So let's go to the 70-200. This is one of those lenses that when you're developing as a photographer, videographer, regardless, this focal length, maybe not this lens in particular, but this focal length is something that you're gonna want covered. It's just reality. There's so much this lens can do. There's so many situations where, especially in the outdoor industry, when I'm filming boat to boat, I'm filming game walking around, if I'm up in a tree stand or in a ground blind or something, that I end up pulling out this lens. If you really need to get way far out there, like you're a rifle hunter or something like that, it's one thing, but this thing does an amazing job at just about everything between 70 to 200. This is an f4. Again, they do have the G Master version of this. That's a 2.8. I haven't had any issues with it. Again, the difference between 2.8 and f4 is going to be, one, you can let more light in, and two, you can put the background a little bit better. You can make things look that much more crisp and whatnot. I found that at 200, even at 70, honestly, this thing does a really good job at f4. The biggest advantage of getting that 2.8 again would probably be just to let more light in, be able to use this thing a little bit longer underneath low light situations. But a lot of that comes down to the lighting you have, if you're shooting outdoors or indoors, whatever, as well as the body. I mean, if I had an A7S II, which is one of the best low light cameras out there, I could probably do a lot with this lens on that, because you can crank your ISO to like 40,000 without hesitation. So. All right, enough about that. Auto stabilization within the lens, that's huge. I can't tell you how many times that on that body or the FS700 I have, which I don't have with me, I'll be putting this on there and I'll be amazed at what movements you can make with your hands. You know you're making, and that image is just crystal clear. It'll take and buffer those big bumps, right? It's not perfect, nothing is. It's not like you're on a gimbal, but dang it, man, this is a really good job at stabilization. What else can I say about this thing? It's full frame, obviously. Again, I think the difference between this and the G Master is like almost another grand, unless you got some money coming in a lot, and you think you need a G Master. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I do this for a living. This is my job. This is what I do. Is I take pictures and shoot video. I don't have a need for it yet. If there's a certain shoot, or I have something that I think I need, or I'm going to shoot with this a lot for a certain time, I might upgrade to it. It won't be that much, but in all honesty, I switch lenses a lot. It keeps you agile, keeps you going. I don't think sticking with one lens all the time is kind of your key. So unless I was doing that, then I might consider the 2.8. But for me, I'd rather have, that's another grand I could spend on other lenses or other accessories or whatnot. And so for now, at least where I'm at in my point, I don't need the 2.8. This f4 is absolutely killer. All right, on to the next one. This is a fun lens. This is a macro 50 mil 2.8. So again, full frame lens, can fit on both of my cameras. I'll kind of go between what the difference is between my cameras and how they affect the lenses in a little bit here, but for starters, this is probably 80% of my in-studio stuff, maybe 90% of my in-studio stuff is done with this. So any product images with light kits indoors. You're doing something where you're showcasing a product with shadows. The last stuff I used to do with 13 was on lens just like this, of reels, of fish runs, close-ups of products for websites and stuff. Just because having that macro to show texture, to show product is killer. It's 2.8, so that's a lot of lighting, which is great. Even though you work with light kits, you don't really need that. But when I do use this out in the field, that is nice. It's 2.8 sharp. There's no stabilization in it. It is a photography lens. But I do use it for photos sometimes if I'm in a situation where I either have a tripod or I have a really solid structure. Really, really good for getting pictures of jigs and fish's mouth. I'll cue a couple of those up here. Also, I've done with tungsten jigs in the summer and the winter, close-ups of a fish's mouth with a jig hanging out of it, or a bass with a tungsten out of it, something like that. This, you can get really close. That's why it's a macro. So I'm pretty sure I can get this thing up to like, I want to say like 1.5 inches focal length from my. I should probably know. Probably says on here somewhere. But regardless, that's what macro's for. It's for really close-up photography. There's a lot of really cool things you can do with this, from textures to water to both photo and video, really. Again, it's not a stabilized lens, so it's a little tougher with video. It does have an autofocus system, but when you're dealing with something that close and that shallow depth of field, you're talking about, if I'm zooming in on my fingernail right here, that if I move this thing, you know, a 0.5 centimeter, I'm out of focus. Like it's insanely touchy, so to speak. So I found myself actually in the field, if I have enough light like during the day, dropping this down to like f8 to 12 or so. Give myself a little bit more of a focal length, backing off maybe a 1/2 foot to a foot, and then getting some shots, and it's just about perfect. Again, release shots of fins, of jigs in the mouth, anything that you want really close up for, this is the one for that. So that's the 50 mil 2.8. All right. Now let's go to this guy here. This is a 70 to 40. This is a Canon L series. I use this predominantly on my FS700. Now, this is a Canon lens, and that FS700 is a Sony, so you need to use an adapter. We're going to get into that in a second here. But for the most part, it's a solid lens. This is an f3.4 to 5 something, depending on the focal length. I got this actually as with another camera when I bought it. I didn't buy this lens. I thought about trading it in and such, but it's in pretty good condition. This is an expensive lens. I think it's only like $500-600, maybe if that, if you find one used or something. But I do like the focal length a lot. It is a 17 to 40, and this is a crop sensor lens. So every lens I've showed you so far is a full frame, and from here, no, this is the only one that's a crop sensor that I have with me. I just sold one that I thought I had with me. I'll go into the differences between a crop sensor and a full frame, probably in another video. So look for that to come up soon. But the things I like about this lens, well, honestly, the thing I like about it is probably when I put the Metabones adapter on it, and that's what I like about it, because the autofocusing on this, whenever you're going through a different lens, like a Canon or a Sigma or something like that, through an adapter, regardless if it's Metabones or Sony adapter or whatever, to your body, whenever there's that, you know, separation, so to speak, they say the autofocus is just as good. That hasn't been proven to me yet. In fact, if I had to take this lens here, which is a 16 to 35, and this is 17 to 40, they're very similar focal lengths, right? A little bit off. This is a crop sensor. So I actually can't use this on a full frame camera because I'll see a bunch of shadows and vignette. Again, I'll go more into that later in a different video. But the autofocusing on this camera, if I just click it autofocus when I'm rolling footage versus this one on my FS700, not even close. Now this does have a better autofocusing system via video because it's a newer camera than the FS700, but anytime you're going through an adapter, it will not pick it up as fast because it's information going through another piece of equipment and then going into your body. So, but when you put a Metabones adapter on here, you can do some cool things with the Ultra Speeds. You can do some pretty cool things. Is a Metabones Ultra Speed. I think it's the T-Booster. There's two different kinds. I forgot when I was buying it which one I bought. It's the Ultra, but they have an Ultra Plus, I think, too. Anyway, this thing has proven its weight in gold, and it is expensive. This little piece is like $600. But it turns my Canon glass into Sony glass. So I can use this lens on my FS700, which is a crop sensor. I have another lens here we're going to end on, and that's a crop sensor, or that's not a crop sensor, it's a full frame, but I'll talk about that in a second. So the biggest thing is, we talk about really sharp images, letting a lot of light in. When you go from this lens here, the 17 to 40, it's a crop sensor, and I put it through the Metabones adapter, which I can do, so to speak, real quick. Actually, I'll leave it on there. There's not really a point to, but I put it through the Metabones adapter, and then this goes on my FS700. What it allows me to do with this Ultra Booster, it lets me drop down like 1.5 stops. So all of a sudden, this turns into a 2.8 to f3.8, maybe 4 at 40 millimeters. So I can widen this out, go up 17 mil, nice wide shot. It's actually 17 millimeter angle because it's on my crop sensor FS700, and it's a 2.8, which not only lets a lot of light in, it's extremely sharp. I can get really nice and close with this one. I think it's probably within 8 to 9 inches. And I can get someone messing or rigging with a rod, kind of like I was talking about the other one, like a line or a jig, and still capture what's all around them. And yet I'm at 2.8. So again, it gives me longer time. I can film longer into the low light hours. And that crisp it is, that depth of field is just tiny. So It can be a really fun lens. I run everything on manual focus. Make sure your peaking settings are right and you test those out and whatnot and calibrate them. But I run everything on manual focus with this lens on the FS700 just because, again, I don't know if it's just this lens, and I will probably get some comments below about, oh yeah, you know, Sigmas or the other Canons or something. It's just because it's an older lens or whatever. That's fine. I don't know. I'm not claiming to fame that I do know that. But this lens, even on a really nice Metabones adapter, on my FS700 still has lag and autofocusing, which is fine. I expect it to. You're going with an adapter. I get it. Again, this is glass that came with the camera that I bought, so I'm not all that worried about it. But again, having that ability to drop down to 2.8 on this lens is killer because this focal length equivalent in a 2.8 capabilities is a much more expensive lens than this one is. So adding that Metabones adapter to it, even though you're reaching the price point, I can use this for other things as well. So that's my 17 to 40. That's probably a little more than I want to go into. Bottom line is, decent lens, it's great, it's fine, but when we put a Metabones adapter on it, it lets you do a whole new level of things, and that 2.8 is clutch. So, on to our last one. This is a beast. This is a Canon 105 to 600, or excuse me, Sigma 105 to 600 with a Canon mount on it. You can see I actually have another adapter on here. This is the MC11. So it does the same exact thing as the one I had in my hand right here. I have two of them. This isn't an ultra speed, this isn't a speed booster, so it's not going to drop it down for me. So I keep this on here for stills mainly. I don't really care about that share depth of field, especially when I'm at 600 millimeters, because it throws the background pretty well anyway. But you'll see what this thing looks like when it's all extended. I mean, it's huge. So I got this on recommendation from a buddy of mine. A lot of you guys probably know Jay. I wanted something that I could film from long shots in a tree stand or ground blind at game animals, or even out west, so to speak. So I did a lot of hunts out west this year, and when you're filming a herd of antelope that are 450 yards out, 400 to 800 yards out even, 1,000 yards out, and you want to get some footage of them, regardless if you're shooting or not, if you don't have a 600, they're going to look like little specks. And unfortunately, a 7200 would not do it. It just won't. It's not far enough. It's not a great enough focal length. So far this has been great. It does have built-in stabilization, which helps. But anytime you're doing video at 600 mils, unless you're on a tripod or like sitting it on, leaning against something, you're gonna have shake with it. Both the camera and the lens are gonna have stabilization in it, but it's not gonna be perfect because you're so far in. It's like a magnifying glass. It's like if you were to look through a telescope at the end of it, it's gonna be shaky because you're looking so far. So for the most part, this stays on a tripod. You have to get a mounting system for it because that's a lot of pressure you're putting on your mount. So I actually have a rail system that goes below my camera and supports the weight of the lens. But again, this is, I think, what was it, an F6? Yeah, F5 to 6.3. So F5 at 150 and at F6.3 at 600. But when I put the speed booster on it, I put the speed booster on it, this thing drops down to F4, I think maybe even 3.8 at 150. So again, an F4 lens at 600, to try and buy that equivalent would be, I mean, I rented an Nikon F4 600 Prime, which is a little different situation, but still same focal length, same, f-stop. It was like a $12,000 lens. This is like a $1,500 lens, this is a $600 adapter. So matching this Metabones adapter, because this is a Canon mount, so you can see I have to have an adapter on this to use this on my Sonys. It is a Canon mount. They don't make this lens in a Sony E-mount. So having that adapter on there is absolutely clutch. For this one, I just keep on the stills that I have as an extra. Ideally, I'd swap it off the Metabones, depending if I'm using that on my other camera or not. Because I have two cameras, I needed two adapters. So absolutely cool lens. I do a lot of the stuff where I'll go way, way out when the guy's ice fishing, or way, way out when I'm filming someone in a boat and just get some B-roll of them casting. Really brings out that foreground, fills up the whole frame of just someone's boat from a mile away. That vantage point at 600 millimeters doesn't get seen out that often because most people don't have glass like this. So it's really cool to use when you do. Just another thing to kind of keep the content fresh and whatnot. And again, if you're doing any kind of wildlife photography, having a 600 like this, even though it's a beast, I know it's a lot to carry around, but you'd be amazed at things you can get. When you talk about an eagle up in a tree, even if you're underneath the tree with a 200 versus this thing, I can zoom in on his whole head, will be the whole frame. And you can do some really cool things with that. So one of my favorite lenses, I don't use it a ton because it's a beast. It's meant for specific shots, but it does come in clutch quite a bit. So, all right, that is it in a nutshell. Just to go over, so in case you're taking notes, something like that, to go back over, we got I'll put a link description below, right? We got the Sigma 150-600 with the Metabones adapter on there. We got the Canon L series 17 to 40. That's f like 4 to 5.6. That's mainly used in my FS700. In studio stuff, the 50 millimeter macro 2.8. Again, a still lens, not for video, but you can if you have a stable hand. This is a 16-35. Probably stays on this camera 60% of the time, maybe even more. I can't tell you how many times I've used this lens and shot a bunch of stuff on it, and I've used it for clients and stuff. So that's another one. One of the funnest lenses I have in here, which is the 1.8 85 mil. I call it my portrait lens. Absolutely a blast to shoot with. And last but not least, the 7200. So, all right, I think that is it. That's really all I'll go about now. I'll have another video coming out soon that talks about the difference between my full frame and the crop sensor and how you can use each one. To give you a little sneak peek of that, when you use this lens, which is a full frame lens, on a crop censored camera like my FS700, this isn't a 150 to 600 anymore. It's more like a 200 to probably almost 800 or so. I don't know the exact conversion, but bottom line is, yeah, it does some really cool things. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to be dropping all the links to this gear in the YouTube description below. And we hope to do more guide gear things like this in the future. So let me know what you want to hear. I'd be happy to make a video about it. And yeah, let's get the boat cleaned and prepped for Florida.